50 years ago, almost to the day, Fulham were in their only FA Cup final. So it's timely we're putting this episode out with John Fraser of that Fulham team, because obviously we're still on a cup run at the moment, 50 years later. John came in. I don't know if people watching this will have seen John play. He was Fulhamish to his core.
Yeah.
A gentleman, felt like a friend as soon as he walked in.
Yeah.
You'll see in a second, he bought his medals.
He bought his medal and his cufflinks as well. The little R.
They're like, his medals from the FA Cup final are like artifacts from an Indiana Jones film. I felt like they were glowing. My hands were shaking when I was holding them.
Yeah, without a doubt. And what's really nice as well is being with someone like John, the comparison between how they were then and how they are now. The fact that during the FA Cup, just before the FA Cup final, they were having to saw their own shin pads, and the stories about painting their boots. And I'm like, yeah, man, how times have changed. But, beautiful man, humble. Yeah.
They have changed, but still no Fulham player since then have achieved what that team did, get into a cup final. Yeah. Love you, John. Come on, Fulham.
Or have sawed their own shin pads, possibly.
Well, that's also probably true. All right, so we're here a couple hours before Fulham play Southampton at Craven Cottage. And, let's just get straight to it. It's an honour and great privilege to have John Fraser on the show. John, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Mate, it's very beautiful to have you here. And we were going to talk about your memories at Fulham, your past here, but the first thing that you've done, which I cannot believe, is taken out of your pocket 2 boxes, like artefacts from the past, which maybe as Ivan opens up, do you want to explain maybe what you brought in? Because I should just say, John is the first person who's come on this show on Fulham Fix who was part of a 1975 Fulham team. In many people's eyes, John was the man of the match from Fulham's side in that cup final.
Yeah.
And tell us what you brought in, mate.
Yeah, go
on. Well, the cufflinks here, first of all.
Original Wembley Stadium as well, look at that.
They were presented to us in the Dorchester Hotel. We went back after the game. Our reception was at the Dorchester Hotel, and we were called up on the stage by the then chairman, Tommy Trinder, and presented us with these cufflinks. And there's a little story behind those, in as much that one of the directors here went along to Aspreys, apparently a week before the actual game, went in there and said, I want so many sets of these cufflinks made up, but they got to be ready for next Saturday. So they said, there's no way we can do that. It can't be done.
Yeah.
He said, I don't care how you do it, how much it costs. I want these for our players.
Yeah.
And apparently they were picked up on the Saturday morning.
No,
that's Dorchester Hotel.
One of them still drying.
Yeah.
Still wet.
But it was a lovely thing, lovely touch, I mean, we lost the game, obviously, absolutely gutted. But, Fulham, everything connected with Fulham in those days, even though it was in the second division, it was all first class. It was a wonderful club.
Mate. Can I just open the other thing that you brought?
Yeah, and the other thing, obviously, is the cup final medal.
My hands are shaking holding this.
Unfortunately, runners up.
But it's still gold, so you can't really tell, right?
Unless you look at the edging, you can't tell. So. But, I can't pretend I won. I can't say it's a winner's medal. So obviously very, very proud to have got that. And very, very lucky. The run into the cup final, you must know the story about Les, got injured, I don't know, about 4 weeks before the final. Yeah. And, he dropped out. I got into the side. Well, actually, it was before, I got in the side before the quarterfinals. Yeah. And it was John Cutbush, the right back, that got injured. So I went in and played at right back in the quarterfinals and stayed there, the league games in between. But then we won that game, and then obviously we were in the semi-finals when we played at Hillsborough, the first game, which was a draw, 1-1. In fact, I think we should have won it that day, to be honest. If you see any of the old film footage, I think we should have won. But nevertheless, we drew 1-1, and then it was back to Main Road on the Tuesday evening for the replay. So we get up there to Manchester, and we play the match. 30 minutes extra time. These lads don't do this now, do they? Extra time, replays. But we went into extra time, and it was virtually the last minute of extra time. In fact, I was just on the halfway line next to Bobby Moore. I'm not name dropping, but I was next to Bobby Moore.
And you can name drop here all you want.
And I just said to Bob, it looks like we're off to Highbury next week then, Bob. The next replay was going to be at Highbury.
You said it to him.
I actually said it. I said, looks like we're going to off to Highbury next week. Bobby said, looks like it, Sharky. So within seconds, I found myself doing an overlap on the right, and Alan Slough, bless him, he's no longer with us. Alan Slough had the ball, and I've gone running past him, and I'm screaming for the ball. And he's looked up, he's ignored me, thankfully, and he launched the ball right into their box.
Yeah.
And can't remember who headed it down, but Johnny Mitchell, Super Mitch, got on the end of it, and he kind of like dived, headed it, and I think it hit their goalkeeper, bounced off him, and Mitch says it hit his shoulder as he's sort of more or less on the floor, hit his shoulder, then went past the keeper. And we were at the back, and we couldn't see it, and it literally just made it over the line.
Wow!
And then it sort of, obviously, the roar went up and the hands. And
it's a goal worthy of making it to a final, isn't it?
That was the last minute, I just couldn't believe it.
Can you still see that in your mind's eye?
I can see exactly. I can see myself, running here, calling it from Sluffy, and he's launched this ball. The ball's been headed down, and Mitch has got on it, and it was like time stood still.
Yeah.
Looking, and then just the roar went up. To be honest, if someone had said to me, "Did you see the ball over the line?" No, I couldn't see it. It was too far. Just couldn't see it. It was only when the hands went up and the roar.
Yeah.
That we realised, and then it was just that feeling. Kick off and the whistle goes, and you're at Wembley.
Yeah,
I bet you had some good. It was a good celebration that night, was it?
Oh, God,
do you remember?
I do. Yeah. Well, it took us. I remember being with Strongy because he was over at left back. I was still in at right back, and we just looked at each other. It took us. Must have taken us 15 minutes to get off the pitch. It was absolute mayhem. I can remember there was a big policeman on the sideline. Chunky policeman. I remember getting hold of him. Like we were dancing along the touchline.
Yes.
And then I heard this voice amongst it. I heard this voice say, "Sharky." Oh God, it's my nickname, by the way, everyone, because of the nose, obviously. I looked up, and it was one of our former players, a guy called Wilf Tranter, who used to play here. He's from Manchester. And I looked up, and in the darkness, he's like, picked him out, and he was about 6 or 7 rows back. He went, "Sharky, brilliant, well done." I thought, Wilf. Anyway, finally got into the dressing room, and it's just mayhem. Mullers is up on the treatment table with a bottle of champagne. Can I say he was naked?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
He was naked, yeah.
Bottle of champagne, and I remember him, he said to me and Les, he said, "I'd like to thank Les and Sharky," he said, "for doing all my running." And God's honest truth. And then it was just mayhem. The dressing room was just, everybody was in there, and it was just an unbelievable feeling. I think, God, you're at Wembley, And then from there, when it all died down, we obviously got changed, got back to the hotel. I don't know, quite late. And I remember I was trying to ring my mum and dad. They'd come to the first game at Hillsborough, but couldn't make it up to the second game. And I was ringing, but the phone was engaged all the time, obviously all my relatives and that phone.
All right, yeah.
And finally got through to my dad, He said, "Well done, boy, well done." That was that. And then, I don't know whether it was Bob or Mullers, who had been one of them two, said, "Come, we're all going to go down to Best's club." George Best had a club in Manchester at the time, So, first of all, we went back to the hotel, who gave us a fantastic reception.
I bet they did, yeah.
Oh, it was brilliant. Absolutely wonderful, And we did all that bit in the hotel and then went down to Best's club. And it's the only time I'd ever met him. I left here before he came in.
Oh, okay.
But walked into his club, and George is standing there, his hands in his pockets, and I could still see him. He had black trousers on and a black polo neck jumper. Stood there with his hands in his pockets like that. I swear he had 3 Miss Worlds on this side and 3 Miss Worlds linking arms this side. Looked at him, and we just went up, sort of introduced, George, blah, blah, blah. And he just, brilliant for you lads, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And, we had a sort of evening there, morning. Went back to the hotel. I think it still went on there at the hotel, from memory. Finally got the bed up in the morning, next morning, which would have been the Wednesday morning, on the train back to London. And they actually stopped the train coming into, was it Euston? I think it was Euston we came into. Yeah. And they stopped the train short of the platforms. What was going on there? They said that there's big crowds in the station.
Really?
Anyway, we gradually pulled in, and it was like a sea of Fulhams.
Oh, that's so
no
cool.
way, waiting for you.
It's getting you choked up. I'm not surprised.
It's just unbelievable, to think they've been all up there, travelled all up the hills right into Manchester, and there they were.
Waiting for you guys to get back.
Yeah, just unbelievable.
I bet there was a lot of embracing going on from
incredible scenes, just a sea of them. And then, so did that, got on the coach, we go back home. That was on the Wednesday. And then we were in the league, we were playing Manchester United on the Saturday again, up at Manchester. So we had to go back up to Manchester although we went up on the Friday night probably. And played at Old Trafford on the Saturday, and unfortunately we played really well again that day. And again, walking out there at Old Trafford, packed house, and the crowd was just fantastic to us. Gave us a standing ovation.
Really, our United crowd did.
Yeah, because we reached Wembley. And played the game there. I say we played really well. We got beat 1-0. Which gave Manchester United the title. They were, 4 or 5 points in front, and that clinched it for them. And another little story attached to that, we get back in the dressing room, and I'm getting changed next to Alan Mullery, just by the number shirts, getting changed there. And all of a sudden the doors open, and there's Tommy Docherty, remember Tommy Docherty? Yeah. He's got a bottle of champagne in one hand, big cigar in the other hand. He's come through the doors, stood at the dressing room door. He's gone, "Hey lads, I just want to thank you for promotion." And he was taking anyway, we were just getting taking our boots off. Mother's has got his boot. Launch it at Tom. Is it Tom's gone like that, hit him in the chest. He's going, "I just want to say thanks, lad." And Muller's giving him a mouthful, as he would do, Alan. But the sort of things that you remember, just mad things.
Well, next year Fulham it'll be 50 years since
that's
that,
right.
And we haven't been to a cup final since FA Cup final.
You will this year.
This year?
I fancy it. I've been saying to friends of mine, I said, I really fancy us to finish in the top 6. And I've been saying this for probably the last 2 months.
Yeah.
I really fancy us to finish in the top 6.
Yeah.
And to reach Wembley
in
the cup final. I don't say win it, but to reach it. And that's just a bit of nostalgia, because we did it 50 years ago.
Great,
wouldn't that be lovely?
I just think it would be, the icing on the cake.
It would be
depending
great.
on when this episode goes out, we might already be out. So hopefully not.
A bit out.
Exactly.
Yeah. But fingers crossed
lovely.
that won't be
It'd
that.
Be great.
Let's talk about our trip to Wembley. Well, obviously, the result wasn't the one we wanted, but some great stories around that. Yeah. One thing I find quite interesting is you don't think of that sort of time as a time when there's kind of like brand kind of sponsorship sort of thing. But you guys were trying to because you made it to the final, they were trying to force you to wear a particular type of boot.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys were like, no, we've got ourselves to Wembley wearing our boots. And I can imagine as well, it's almost a superstitious thing at that point. We're like, we want to wear the boots that got us here. And you guys had to go to court with it, didn't you?
Yeah, well, there was no way we would wear a brand new pair of boots in the final. I mean, the boots we used to wear in those days were either Adidas or Puma.
Yeah.
And we used to wear them for a fortnight before we started.
It mould your feet a little bit.
To break them in, you know. I mean, the boots today, you put them on, they're like carpet slippers, aren't they?
Yeah.
But, I mean, the boots in those days, you had to break them in, you know, which we did in training before the season started. But, going back to that, on the Friday night, was in the hotel up at Hendon, night before the cup final. And, again, we were sitting in the lounge, I don't know, probably 10 o'clock, up past 9, 10 o'clock, just having a coffee or whatever, having a meeting. And all of a sudden the doors sort of burst open to the lounge. And a guy comes marching in with a bunch of papers in his hand and a camera in his other hand. Mm-hmm. And we thought, what's going on here? And he's made a beeline for Bobby Moore. And he's walked across to Bob and he's trying to plant these papers in his lap, trying to get Bob to take them and get a photograph.
Wow.
So none of us knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So our then coach, again, bless him, Bill Taylor, who's no longer with us, he gets hold of this fella, marches him across to the door, throws him out. He said, if you come in here again, you know, you're going to get a clump. So none of us knew what it was about. I thought, what's going on here? So it transpired. I don't know whether we found out that night or I think it's probably the next morning. They had to have a court case. What had happened, the club, unbeknown to us, the club had signed a contract with the boot manufacturer, I won't name them, that if we got into, I don't know, it's the FA Cup final or a final, that we'd have to wear their boots.
Right.
They'd given us a pair of boots at the start of the season, but we never wore them, you know, so it was always that. And the
club probably thought it was so unlikely that we get to find
well, obviously, you know, we didn't know anything about it. You know? So, apparently they now Strongy tells me that he went up to the court. He reckons they opened the Old Bailey up for this because there was a threat they could pull the plug on the game because I suppose technically Fulham had broken the contract, you know. Anyway, Les went up with various people from the club. This is the next morning, and cup final morning those days, you know, used to start like there used to be interviews at breakfast and all that. You know, we'd done all the interviews at breakfast and having a right old laugh, and then they came back. Les came back with directors and whatnot and said, "The game's going ahead, lads, but we've come to a compromise." And the compromise was that they demanded that 6 of our players would paint out the stripes on our boots and paint their stripe in white on the boots.
That's so weird.
Yeah. So
were the players? Can I ask? Was it down to the players?
Yeah,
they stripes. So it wasn't like someone came in from whoever the brand is and went, "It's going to meet," you know. So it could have been the wonkiest stripe ever.
Yeah. Well. We had to get some paint from somewhere. I don't know where they got the paint. But they had to get black paint to paint the Adidas or Puma stripe out, and white paint to paint the white stripe of their thing.
Yeah.
So
that is great.
We said, okay, the game's going on. So I said, can we have 6 volunteers? You know, they want 6 players to do this. So I said, yeah, I don't mind painting it. So I was one. I can't remember who the other lads were. So that was that. So the game's going ahead now. We know, sure, oh, blimey, Christ, could have missed out, you know.
Yeah.
But the game's going ahead. So we do that and then we make our way to Wembley and get to Wembley. I think we got there about 1:30. And, you know, well, they still do it, I believe. But in those days, we used to put our own studs in, either a long stud or a short stud, depending what the pitch was like. So about 1:45, we all go out on the pitch, like looking at the, you know, just take a soft stud or a long stud, whatever. And of course, they'd only just opened the ground up at that time, and it was barely a quarter full.
Right.
You know? And that was the first time I'd actually been on the Wembley pitch. You know, I'd been in the stand. I'd only been in the ground twice in my life.
Yeah.
But to go on the pitch, you know, and I'm looking round. Yeah. And I've got to tell you, my legs were like jelly. I really used to suffer with them. You know, I used to get nervous a lot. And I thought, God, blimey, I'm looking around. And you try and not let anybody see this, you know, on big smiley faces, waving, like someone, you know, up in the crowd. Yeah, all right, yeah, great. Like, all this. And inside, my God, guts are churning and my legs. I'm thinking, if I'm like this now, what am I going to be like at 3 o'clock? I'm just thinking, just don't let anyone down, John. Don't let anyone down. All your mates are looking, all your schoolmates, you know. And they told us, they'd taken us to Wembley on the Wednesday, I think, just into the ground to get us used to the size of it, you know. And they said there'll be over 300 million people watching this live.
That doesn't help,
does
it? It doesn't help.
Yeah, of course, in those days, that's the thing was on TV
It
across
was.
the world.
It was. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Most of the country used to come to a standstill on cup final day because it used to be on the television. There'd be stuff going on from 9, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
All the way through until the game was finished, you know.
Yeah.
And so they've told us that, and I'm thinking, God, blimey, I'm thinking, my mum and dad, this, that, you know. I thought, what am I going to be like at 3 o'clock? You know, I'm just telling myself, you know, just don't let anyone down today, John, you know, Christ's sake. Anyway, we do that, and we come off the pitch, walk into the dressing room, and there's Bobby Moore sitting on a seat in the dressing room. He's got his hands behind his, like that, cross-legged like that. As I walked in, and he just said to me, all right, Sharky, did you enjoy that? And I said, God, Bob, there's something else, mate, in it, out there. I said, God, dear. He said, no, mate, he said, just do what you've been doing. He said, you'll be all right. I said, all right, cheers. So that was that. And it wasn't until, I'll carry on with this bit because I'm going backwards and forwards otherwise, yeah. So we get in the dressing room. So it's now like coming up 2 o'clock. So in those days, all the kit was done, obviously the day before, you know, packed by the apprentices and the trainer and that. And they opened skips up, big wooden baskets. I don't know whether they still got the same things today, but called them skips, big wooden wicker baskets, like with all the kit in. Open that, so get all the shirts out, get all the boots out. No shin pads.
No shin pads.
Got no shin pads. And in those days, we used to have our own shin pads, like cut down to size. There used to be the big things like about this wide, big plastic things. Yeah. And of course, me being a little skinny fella, like, and others, you know, we used to cut them, hacksaw them down to get them to the size where they're comfortable for you, you know. Right. So, got no shin pads. First the boots, now the shin pads. So, well, they had to get a policeman on a motorbike to go down to Wembley High Street. There was a sports shop, fortunately.
Oh, 2 o'clock?
This is at 2 o'clock. This is gone 2 o'clock now. So
and the FA Cup final starts at 3.
At 3, you have to be out in the tunnel at 2:45.
Do you know if the policeman said, "Oh, it's for the team about to play the final in an hour's time"?
Shin pads.
No, you don't have 11 really good sets of shin pads, do you?
But anyway, while he's off doing getting the shin pads, there's 6 of us standing around the treatment table sharing a hacksaw. Sorry, I ain't got the shin pads yet. Sorry, doing the painting. We're doing the painting of the boots.
Yeah, okay. It's like arts and crafts.
Yeah, and there's a few people in the van, and Johnny Haynes came. John had flown. He was in South Africa at the time. Yeah. But he'd flown over for the game, you know, and he's in the dressing room. And I can remember sitting there painting my boots, and I'm thinking, God, it was more or less 5 years ago that I used to clean his boots. I used to clean John's boots. Yeah. And it was just like another big emotional moment, man. God, world famous Johnny Haynes. You know, I thought, I was cleaning his boots, and I thought, God, he's come over to watch this game, you know. Anyway, that was that. Did the boots. I can't remember what time they got the shin pads back, but there we are. 6 of us like sawing them up, so a bit more off of there, and do that. And do you know what? I can't remember anything
about the game
that the manager said to us or the trainer. Right. I assume he said, just go out and enjoy it, lads, do what you've been doing. Yeah. But I can't remember sitting down and actually physically, because I think we were too busy just doing
shin pads.
Yeah. Adrenaline as well.
Yeah.
Would have been
probably quite helpful in a way. It just takes your mind out.
Maybe that was the tactics. We need the shin pads.
Yeah. I think that did me a favour in then, because had that not happened, I'd have been sitting there and
thinking too much.
And I told you how nervous I was.
It's the arts and crafts going on when you're painting your boots and sawing some stuff.
Yeah, unbelievable. But I mean, can you imagine that happening today?
Oh my God.
Unbelievable.
Oh my God.
You mentioned Bobby Moore, obviously. I've read a few things in the past about him saying that he was very aware. Obviously, 9 years previous to the World Cup final, he'd won at the same place, but him trying to keep a low profile a little bit because of all of you guys. Was that something you were aware of?
Well, that's what I was going to mention earlier, but save going backwards and forwards. It wasn't until, I don't know, probably a few months after that, suddenly dawned on me that I think the reason Bob didn't go out on the pitch at 2:00, 2:45.
Yeah.
Had he gone out there, I think he would have taken all the limelight away from the rest of the team, him and Mullers. And I think he did that purposely to, I've done it so many times. It's your day, lads.
Yeah.
And he
just I felt quite emotional that.
Yeah.
He understood.
When I thought about it, I thought, that's what he did that for. And that's the sort of man he was,
Yeah.
I don't suppose you ever met him, did you? Probably too young.
No, I was too young.
He was an absolute...
So you knew him quite well, but you would have known him quite well.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, obviously crossed that back four together. But socially, you knew him quite. Yeah, you would have done.
Yeah, well, being in the team and training, and we'd have a beer afterwards. And Bob liked a lager. He liked his half a lagers, Bob. Don't ever drink halves.
Right.
But he drink 30 of them to keep up with the rest of them.
40 of them.
Yeah.
But he was a lovely, lovely man, Bob.
Yeah.
Absolute gentleman, and so good. I think it's tragic that he never got involved with England,
Yeah.
I think he should have been given a job there immediately.
Yeah, so true, actually.
Just to use his brains,
Yes.
Absolutely. But a lovely, lovely man, I mean, going away, when you used to play away games, sitting on the coach, Bob generally used to sit down the front and he'd be going along as he got close to the ground, you see all the away supporters, you see them all go, it's Bobby Moore, Bobby Moore. But lovely, lovely man. Yeah. Lovely man, real gentleman.
I mentioned at the start very quickly, but the folklore is, or from Fulham fans that were at that game, that you were the Fulham man of the match on that day. Do you remember anything about? Because it's interesting saying how nervous you were, but you obviously were in your element when the game started. Or do you remember anything about that? Did you feel like?
Well, yeah, going back just before the game, sort of walking out and that, I can remember telling myself, just get a few decent passes in early on, John. Just try and be calm, and just make sure you don't give the ball away. And it actually worked out like that for me. I started off okay, and I did quite well. People said to me afterwards, you're a man of the match, John, this, that and the other, and I thought, well, I don't know about that, but I know I did well on the day. I was involved quite a lot, In fact, I watched it on YouTube quite recently. I'd only ever watched it once before, but I did have quite a lot of touches in the game and I did a hell of a lot of running, So, whether I was or not, I don't know.
Do you remember a moment where you're enjoying it? I'm in the game and I'm buzzing and,
Yeah, I do, And that was walking off at half time. I know I'd done well the first half.
Yeah.
And walking in, I remember thinking to myself, we've won, we're going to win this game. I thought, there's no way they are going to score against us, No way. I mean, I was marking Pat Holland to start the game, right winger, but he buggered off the other side. Second half, he started over the other side. But walking in, and then Jimmy Conway came past me as we were walking in the tunnel, and he said, "Well done, Sharky." He said, "Well done, keep that going." I thought, it's lovely, for a teammate to say that, And I really couldn't wait to get out for the second half.
Yeah.
I really couldn't wait.
Oh, amazing.
I'm telling myself, inside 45 minutes, John, you're going to be.
Trophy,
Yeah.
And, well.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
But it's still just such a phenomenal achievement, isn't it? If you look back on the history of Fulham, it was at the time, and it is even more with every passing year. 10 years ago, you got together with the guys. I think there was a 40-year anniversary thing, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's
and
right.
This year's going to be 50.
Yeah.
So, are you still in touch vaguely with some of the
team? Yeah. Still see, Strongy most of the time, but Mitch, whenever I come here, if there's players here, we meet up. Mitch comes down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Still good friends with Ernie Howe. He was best man at my wedding, Ernie. Still in touch. In fact, I was down Ernie's a few months ago. He'll be coming up to my place shortly. But as soon as we get together, those of us who are left, in the team now, because it's 2 or 3 have passed away, but it's like back 50 years ago, we were all taking the mick out of each other, And,
remember that 10 years ago, because that was my first. I just started taking over from David Hamilton, and I remember just one of the first bits out, sort of, I guess, call it halftime entertainment. It was bigger than that. It was epic, and it was obviously the 40th 40-year anniversary, and we had all of you guys there. Luckily, Diddy did actually join me for that, because I think at that point it was just almost overwhelming for me to have all you guys there. And, it was awesome, man. It was so cool. I bet then as well, there was some good. Did you have a bit of a party then? Like, do you remember that one?
Well, I suppose we all had a few drinks and that, but something that stands out in my mind is we was invited around that time.
Yeah.
We were invited down to Motspur Park, the training ground.
Yeah.
And I think when we were invited, there was only 6 or maybe 7 of us that could actually make it on that day. People doing other things, working, etc. And we went down and we were invited for the whole day, to watch them training, and then went in for lunch and, had lunch amongst all the players. And, got down to Motspur Park. And the first thing that hit me, how many players were there? Yeah,
numbers and
stuff. Yeah, the reserves, blah, 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 blah. It seemed hundreds to me out there, all in different groups and that. But that was great. Enjoyed that, watching the training and everything. And then we went inside for lunch. And we were sitting together with 2 or 3 people from Fulham, I can't remember exactly who was there, but I think there was someone from the board and someone else. And we sat down at the table, and as I say, as soon as we meet up, it's all taking the mick out of each other. Sharky has a nose and all this, and it was
your nose looks fine to me. I wouldn't say it's just saying, man. Like you mentioned it when you came in. I'm like,
how much was the check? I arrived there. It was cheap.
Your quickly, the Sharky thing was you were swimming backwards. You were swimming, weren't you doing like backstroke or something in your nose?
It's a story, actually. I've got to tell people now, Mullers, if you ever see this, I've got to tell the truth. The story Alan told, cup final morning, at the breakfast thing. Yeah, he was like introducing us to players. He said, "This is Sharky." He said, "Blah blah blah." He said, "Got his name." He said, "We was out in Italy on tour." He said, and Sharky was in the water doing the backstroke. He said, and everyone started shouting out, "Shark, Shark." So that stayed like that. But I was already called Sharky before that. And there was a mate at school, a fella called Barry Hunter in our school team. I'd got my nose broken. I broke it 3 times. Well, twice I know of, definitely. And 3rd time I didn't bother going to the hospital because I don't do it if you can breathe. Yeah. So
can you breathe?
Can you breathe?
Yeah, you're good. Breathe, don't worry. But first time I broke it, playing at school, and fella just turned. It's accidental. He turned around his elbow right on the thing. Anyway, I broke it. Blah blah blah. And it just seemed like every time we played for the school and that, I was getting knocked in the face, elbow, or And coming back on the coach from this school game, my mate said, "Yeah, John," he said, "you keep getting your nose bashed like that." He said, "You're going to end up looking like a shark." I said, "Yeah, cheers, Barry." So from that moment, I was only, 14 then, maybe 15.
Yeah.
Stuck.
And it just stuck, But Alan told the story, and I didn't.
Went along with it.
It's a quite cool nickname.
Yeah.
Considering what some, kids get called at school. I mean, you got called shark. I'm a shark.
Could be worse.
Deadly animal.
Could be worse, I suppose.
Predator.
You saying going to Motspur? Where did you guys train? Did you train?
We used to train. Well, when I first joined Fulham, we used to train. When I first joined, I was a schoolboy. We used to go 2 evenings a week down to Elsfield, down to the school there, Elsfield School. Used to get the bus from the White City down to Elsfield 2 evenings a week.
Right.
And that was where I first met, you wouldn't remember him, but the manager at Fulham that time was a man called Vic Buckingham.
Right.
And he only came down a couple of times just to introduce himself. But the man we had in charge of his coaching was a man called Dougie Houghton. And that's where we really got into proper football, thinking about passing the ball, being considerate to the man who's receiving it and this, that, and that. And I believe it was Dougie's son that went on to manage, was it Malmo? And they won, they won one of the big European trophies. But yeah, Dougie Houghton, lovely man. But yeah, going back in those days, so Vic Buckingham was the manager of the club here. After him came Bobby Robson. I never met Bobby here. I met him later on in life at an airport. But yeah, Bobby Robson, he then went off, obviously, to Ipswich. And, you know, had fantastic success there, and obviously with England. After Bobby had Johnny Haynes stood in for, it wasn't very long, he was like temporary manager till they got a new manager. And I played with Johnny in the reserves here, which what a you know, bloody hell. Yeah. You know, Christ. I was 16 at the time. I'd only just signed, you know, and I got in the reserve side due to George Cohen, that was. Got to mention George.
Yeah, because George converted you to a fullback,
right?
Didn't he?
Yeah, I was a midfield player, really. I, you know, I could sort of run all day, you know, but I didn't have that pace, you know, I was never quick. But I loved it, you know, up and down, getting involved, tackling that, you know. And George just said to me one day, he did ever such a lot for me, George, you know. God, I can't, you know, again, wonderful man, you know. But he was out on the pitch one day. He was out on the pitch training by himself, you know. He's getting me to knock balls into channels and things like that. And he said, John, he said, they're short of fullback tomorrow in the reserves. He said, you fancy having to go at fullback? And I said, George, I'll play anywhere, you know, play in the reserves. I mean, I was only playing in the youth team at the time, you know. So I played the next day in the reserves. And I suppose I must have done okay, because that's where I sort of stayed, you know. And George, you know, gave me so much time, you know, lovely, lovely man, spent so much time there. It was really, I had my real purple patch when I was playing in midfield, you know, and George was out looking after us, youth team manager. We went out took us out to Germany, and we won the competition out there. Then went out to Italy. We didn't win it, but, you know, through George again. But I was really having a purple patch, you know, during this period. But then, you know, well, I won't tell the stuff he did for me, but suffice to say, George was a huge influence on my career, you know.
Well, he's part of, even if you look out there, you can almost see George, don't you? He's such a part of the club, isn't he?
If only I've had his pace.
It's quick.
They tell me George used to run 100 yards in 10.3 seconds in his football boots.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
They were heavy back then.
Well, painted with paint added on.
With that extra, that extra paint.
Yeah, but no, it was a strong, fit, strong, quick, you know, great fullback. And
can I quickly ask, what do you think was different about Fulham? Because we talk about Fulham these days as obviously being a family club, community. People like yourself seem to come back with a lot of love for Fulham. Do you think there's something that separates Fulham or that is similar about Fulham now that it was then? Do you still see the same club?
Well, my experience was that when I joined Fulham, as I say, as a schoolboy, it already had a reputation of being really good for the youngsters, you know, being very good with them, treating them well. Yeah. And certainly true in my case, you know, when I used to go to the school 2 evenings a week, you know, we was always looked after very well, and then moved up into the youth side at Elliott School. Again, the coaches there were very good. And I can only say the club from top to bottom, really. Bearing in mind, I didn't know anything else. You know, I didn't know anything else from the age of 14. Fulham was my club. I didn't know anything else. And everything was just first class, you know, the way they run it. It was always run, or they tried to run it on the best they possibly could, you know.
And this was kind of cemented a little bit for you as well, because you did eventually go to Brentford, didn't you?
Yes, yeah.
And you noticed the vast difference, which makes you even more of an icon with us Fulham fans. Is you know, you're able to go, been Brentford. It's not nice.
Yeah. Well, it was the little things really that made, you know, opened your eyes. Really. I mean, first morning training at Brentford, and I've said this before in the programme, you know, so it's nothing new, but. we had a big heap of kit in the middle of the dressing room, you know, all odd socks and shorts and tops, and you had to go and pick, you know, like a pair of green shorts, a red top and one white sock. And it was that sort of thing. And you had to take it home and wash it yourself, bring it back. It was just very, very different. And I think I was probably spoiled at Fulham, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think all clubs
had that
were that good.
Yeah.
You know, how Fulham were.
But also a magical time, man. You just found Fulham exactly in the moment of magic, wasn't there?
Yeah. And, you know, I think Fulham has always attracted, used to attract, you know, showbiz people and that.
Yeah.
With Tommy Trinder,
yeah.
You know, I think that's probably the start of it, where all the people he knew in the showbiz world.
Yeah.
It attracted those sort of people, and it was always like a fun place to be.
Yeah.
You know? So
Amazing.
Beautiful. Just finally, before you go, John, when you look out at the ground, can you remember your history here? Like, that's what I always like. I always like looking at it and thinking like the ghosts of Fulham.
Oh, absolutely. I remember walking out for the very first time. Am I right? I remember walking out the very first time for my debut against Blackpool. That was in October '71. I was just 18, and again, I told you I always used to get very nervous and wound up for the game. And walking out, I think the crowds in those days used to get about 10,000 average. Yeah. But 10,000 to me, you know, walking out, was unbelievable. But I remember certain things. I remember scoring my one and only goal down this end, which I've got to tell you about, for those who don't know. And again, we got a free kick, sort of just inside this half, kicking this way. Yeah. And I was playing right back that day, and I think Alan was on the ball, and he just said to me, just push forward, Shark. He said, you'll get this. I'll get this. What am I going to be involved in a free kick? Yeah. Who's to have a go at me if I went over the halfway line, you know? Right. Anyway, I sort of wandered up there, and I was sort of about 5 yards outside the corner of the penalty box there. And anyway, the free kick's taken. I think it got headed out. And it came out just on the corner, or it might have been just a yard inside the box. And I just hit it half volley, and it flew into the top corner here against Norwich City.
Yes.
Did you know when you'd hit it that's going in?
Well, I knew I hit it well, but whether the keeper, I mean, wouldn't I say keeper? It was this side. They always used to say the keeper should, you know, never let anything in the near side post.
Yeah, but if it's a worldie, they can't stop that.
Was it first touch as it came to you?
One touch, it come down, man. I just thought it's it. And believe it or not, I actually got photos of it. Got a photo of, like, I just hit the ball. Nice. And also afterwards, I turned around like that, and I think it was Alan Slough came up and he just picked me up in the air, like, I was like that, you know. But I remember things like that. I remember being I was sub in those days. We only used to have one sub, you know. Sub. And we had Santos came over playing exhibition matches, and I was sub that night. And I remember the trainers' boxes where we used to sit was over on the other side there. You used to have two little like brick huts, you know, where you have the manager sitting in, the trainer and the sub. And I was sub that night, and there was Pele on the pitch, you know.
Wow.
Wonderful side. And I can actually remember thinking in my mind, I mean, they were unbelievable, as you can imagine.
Yeah,
you know?
Hello.
And they had a left winger called EDU at the time. Yeah, I remember sitting there, and Johnny Cutbush was playing right back. It was a really good fullback. And I remember this EDU like flicking it over his head and around the other side, like doing tricks. I thought, oh Christ, don't get injured, John. I don't want to be playing against that. Yeah. Which really, I should have been dying to have got on. There is a photograph of Pele in the box here, and it's going back there. You can't really see it's me, but I am sitting in the box there. You know, I managed to, what's the name on me? But
you tell your mates there's a photo of me and Pele just hanging out together.
Yeah, and there's another thing, but I'm not going on too long here.
No, go on.
Just quickly. When they released, they told me they were going to release me, Fulham, and they said, got a few people, there's someone here from America wants to have a chat with you. And they were from New York Cosmos at that time. Yeah. They were the team, like, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, had the thinking like, and they offered me. I mean, the money was on here was very average, you know, for those days, and the level I was, you know, and there they were offering me this, offering me that. Wound up, I'd have been on 6 or 7 times the salary that was on here.
Wow!
But I'd only just got married, and it just didn't feel right.
Goes to New York, yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, cut that long story short. About 5 or 6 weeks later, who do you reckon New York Cosmos signed?
Oh no,
Pele.
Oh,
and Franz Beckenbauer.
There's some teammates, aren't they?
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. Pele
Wow.
and Franz Beckenbauer. Yeah. So,
no regrets though.
I can't. I mean, I'd love to have done it. You
Yeah.
know, looking back, if I could have done that and still done what I've done, you know,
Yeah.
I'd love to have done it. But I can't have any regrets. I was so lucky
Man.
to the way it unfolded for me. You know, with first John getting injured and being out for that length of time, and sort of doing quite well. Really, I mean, that was obviously my best period. You know, I was getting more and more confident. And then Les, unfortunately, what happened to Les? You know.
Yeah.
Just heartbreaking for him, and sort of filling in at left back, you know. But I could kick with both feet, which was a bit of a bonus, I suppose, you know.
Do you know what I think we should do? If you're watching on YouTube, which the majority of people do, we'll put those photos, we'll find the photos
Yeah.
of your goal against Norwich and a Pele photo,
Yeah.
and we'll stick them up at the end of the episode because I think that picture needs shown, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, so you wouldn't see me in the box. It was a night game, but I'm sitting there with
there somewhere.
Alex Stockton, the trainer. Yeah, but
John, thank you so much for your time, mate.
pleasure.
Really
Oh, I'm glad I bought them for you. I don't know. I just took it for granted that perhaps you would have.
I've never seen it. It's
Never,
amazing.
I feel like I'm
Well,
melting.
you want any
holding it.
photos yourselves? Take
Yeah,
photos,
Thank you
know,
very
no-
much.
No problem.
John Fraser there. I mean, what a lovely guy, and just so apt that we're putting that out before our next game that we're not going to talk about because we don't want to jinx it. So we're done.
Don't want to jinx it. Ivan, who's on next week?
Collins John, the one and only, just one of the nicest guys.
And what a story as well, but brought into Fulham Football Club, and he scored so many great goals, and he's still got a lot of love for the club. Like all of them do, it turns out. Come on, Fulham.